Welcome to Cardio Insights, the podcast where we explore how digital solutions are transforming cardiovascular and emergency medicine. Featuring thought leaders from leading institutions across the globe, this series of conversations unveils the power behind clinical algorithms and decision support tools, and how they are changing the way we diagnose and manage cardiac conditions. From their impact on clinical practice, their benefits for patient outcomes, and the challenges they pose to health systems in terms of implementation and regulation, this podcast is intended as a precious resource for healthcare professionals in cardiology and emergency medicine who are curious to learn more about this exciting field. I'm your host, Matthew Chaffert, and you are listening to Cardio Insights. So welcome, Sara, to this new episode of Cardio Insights, the podcast where we explore how digital solutions are transforming cardiology and emergency medicine. For our listeners who might be new to you, you are a senior user experience designer and researcher at Roche, with a background in design and engineering. So your work focuses on bringing the user perspective into product development to deliver solutions that are tailored to users and customers' needs. You have a strong interest in designing products for the healthcare industry, as you've done in the past when you designed a smart system to monitor laboratory instruments in a centralized way, so through a single digital touchpoint. And more recently at Roche, you've been working on the development of clinical algorithms, designing solutions that are safe and efficient for healthcare professionals. So in this episode, we want to explore and learn from you about the aspects that come into play when we think about integrating digital tools into existing health systems infrastructures, and the challenges that can be faced to make such solutions available and fit the current ways of working from healthcare professionals. So user experience, interoperability, data privacy, data safety are a few of the themes that come to mind, and our aim with this episode is to give our listeners the basis to understand, the implications that these digital tools pose from a technical perspective on health systems. So the first question that I would ask you is, what are the different technical aspects that need to be considered? I mentioned a few in the introduction. When we think about integrating these new tools in a way into health systems and hospitals and existing care pathways.
Thanks for your question, and thanks for inviting me to this episode. So there are several technical aspects to consider when it comes to the integration of digital solution in the hospital systems and specifically in the emergency department systems. What I believe is one of the first things that is really needed to be done is really to map out all of the different processes that are within a specific clinical workflow, and to see which ones are on a digital base or still paper base. So it's really important to understand the level of technology, the technological maturity that the different healthcare systems have in order to provide a solution that can actually be easily implemented and easily used. We are learning through all of the research that we are doing in the scope of algorithms within Roche that the level of technology used in the different healthcare facilities can really vary from country to country, from kind of facilities to other ones. So, for instance, there are the private ones that compared to the public ones, they have level of technology that is, of course, very different. So it's really important to understand the facilities that we want to work with, how available they are, how open they are to actually use some new products. And then, of course, when it comes to clinical algorithms, especially in the emergency department, what is really crucial is the integration of data. And this is really a recurring topic in developing such kind of tools. And this means that all of the information, all of the data that are already in use in the hospital systems, specifically in the IT systems, can be reused, can be used also by the products that we are providing. And this is really key. This interoperability that you already mentioned in the introduction. So the ability of the system, IT system, to exchange data and information. This is really important, because it's the way that we have to guarantee that what we are providing can be really integrated in the current pathway, in the pathway that are already in places in hospitals, general practitioner's office, and of course also in the emergency department. The integration of data and the continuity in the data flow is crucial, but it's also it's something that's represent a challenge to achieve, because being able to speak, to open the data, the hospital data, to an external products provider, it's not so straightforward, because of course there are many other topics, issues that arise in this case. So the data privacy, data security, is a little bit, it is challenging, and we are working on that. For sure.
Can you explain us some of the challenges that you face in that regard? So you mentioned that one part of your work is to assess how the workflows and the ways of working at at an individual hospital level, and see how your users are actually providing care and using some of the tools, or let's say prototypes that you guys are working on. The other aspect that you mentioned was this heterogeneity, so the differences between hospitals in terms of how they are structured from an IT perspective. So can you tell us what are, let's say, the biggest challenges that you face with respect to these aspects that you've mentioned?
Yeah, sure. So when it comes to the users, our end users, so in the emergency department, emergency nurses and emergency physicians, I believe that one of the biggest challenge is how to drive adoption of new tools, because of course the healthcare industry in general is, let's say, full of protocols and guidelines, so essentially of rules that physicians and nurses they have to follow. And when we provide a new solution that has to be integrated, it's very hard to provide a solution on a large scale that can fit most of a big portion of the market, because protocol and guidelines they change from region to region, from country to country. Like for instance, in the US, they have some guidelines that are on a national level, and then within the national level, they can have some changes on a regional level, and we are learning that they can even have some things changing based on a hospital level. So this is really a big bottleneck for us, because if of course it's easier to provide a solution, like for instance for a pilot for a specific customer, but then when we want to provide a solution that can satisfy a big portion of the market's needs, when it comes to protocols and guidelines, we can face some issue there, and also in regards of the users. They are already used, of course, to work on a daily basis, following some protocols, some pathway. They have their own clinical workflow, and we're learning through the research that we are doing that it's quite hard for them to change a little bit the way they work. And because especially in the emergency department, again, they're really overwhelmed already by a series of external inputs, and they have to interact already with so many different systems that are both software and hardware. So when we design new solutions, we have to be sure that we are providing something that is beneficial for the user, but at the same time, it's really integrated in a seamless way, so that we are not going to change drastically the way they operate. And this is for sure one of the biggest challenges that we are facing.
I understand. And to double click on the user experience piece, how do you make sure that these tools are designed and used in a way that fits the workflows of HCPs? Because To give you some context, when we recorded few of these episodes with healthcare professionals or professors of medicine and researchers who have a clinical practice, and that's probably the biggest topic they brought up was they are all, I think, quite tech savvy, and let's say more than average, and still they I think the main element that they brought up was to say, well, if we were to use such solutions, we need to, they need to be super simple for us to use, and it doesn't need to require, let's say, a heavy learning curve, both, let's say, from an implementation, but from a use case perspective. So how do you go about, thinking about how these tools can be used in the best way for them?
Yeah, well, I think it's really key to design together with them. So as we start defining the requirements of the solution that we are delivering, I think it's really important to immediately start from the very beginning to ask for feedback, the real end users. And then as we come out with different progress in the solution, always test together with our real target user. I think that's this is really crucial. And then once we have a solution, we first try such solution maybe with a pilot site in a way that we can have some real hands-on feedback on the field. And then we can reiterate and make some changes where needed.
I was also wondering, given the diversity of countries and health systems overall, I mean, you work with across many different geographies, so it's this complexity is part of your daily work. Are there or how do you go about selecting some of the sites or those geographies where you can provide a certain type of solution? Because I understand that given the diversity of configurations and setups for hospitals, there might be certain that might be, let's say, more prone as well to test those solutions. How is this? How do you go about that?
Yeah, well, in this case, we mainly follow the business needs and market needs. And also, as you said, exactly, there are some differences that we have to take in consideration when designing for a specific area. And so we tend to design for the areas that we already know quite well. So, for instance, of course, in the European market, we already have quite a lot of products for which we already have many feedback and insights coming from our customer. And so this make it also easier for us to define the requirements for some specific area. Then anyway, there are the specific guidelines and the specific standards for each region and country. Then whenever we decide to launch a product on a specific country, we will study the guidelines and the standards, and we will ask for feedback, for instance, to the regulatory bodies that is responsible for each specific region, in a way to be sure that our product is compliant with the standards that are in the different regions.
Understood. I think this is also a topic that we discussed in, for example, the episode with Matthew Prime, who's an international business leader at Roche for clinical algorithms. It's this, the topic of collaboration between academic and industry. I think the other aspect that we talked in other episodes with some of the key opinion leaders in cardiology and emergency, we got to meet through that podcast, was the use of, let's say, machine learning and artificial intelligence for clinical algorithms, which in a way makes them, a bit or more intelligent than what they used to be. It goes beyond just this, let's say, a sequence of decisions that were programmed, let's say, in a more simplistic way. And I think it raises questions about, how these solutions actually work, because, you don't have access, or you cannot understand easily the logic behind them. So you have to put more trust in the solution itself before you can use it. How do you see these advancements, in the field of clinical algorithms? How do you also go about it, within your work at Roche?
Yeah, that's a very nice question. Generally speaking, I believe these clinical algorithms, they have a high potential and they can be really beneficial for physicians because generally speaking, again, the aim with these tools is really to reduce the cognitive workload of physicians, to save them some time on a daily basis, and even if when possible to reduce some tasks that they have to do. And as you said, the machine learning algorithms are also getting more and more on the market. And I'm working right now in one algorithm in the kidney stream that is based on a machine learning logic. And when we design our solution, we always have to keep in mind some risks that can occur during the interaction of the end user with our interface. And when it comes to machine learning algorithms, the biggest risk that also the regulatory bodies want us to focus on is really the so-called automation bias. So the physicians, or generally speaking people, they tend to overtrust a solution, a result, when they know that it's based on a machine learning algorithm, because right now there is this tendency to trust more and more whatever is automated. But at the same time, the algorithms are also called clinical decision support tools. So they're just there to support the final decision of the physician. So it's very important when we design a solution to make it clear to the end user the fact that their advice is not going to be replaced by the algorithm result. Because algorithms can really improve the clinical workflow, but they are not going to replace physicians' knowledge, experience, advice. And in most of the cases, at least on the algorithms that I've been working on, such tools are going to be complementary to several other sources of information. So the patient clinical history, some other test results, physician experience, of course. And so, this is another challenge that we are facing on a daily basis on the product development of the machine learning algorithms, is how we can train and instruct the physicians, nurses, the end user in general, that they don't have to merely rely on the algorithm's results, but just consider the results that we are suggesting them, but of course always keep in mind while taking their decision an additional information and source of information.
Understood. It's interesting because I think it makes the link as well to what Professor Michael Gibson was saying in the episode we recorded with him, where he was already seeing the benefits it has in terms of freeing up mind space and making, in the end, the interaction between patients and doctors more human, because you can have already these days, consultations where everything is recorded. There is much less work needed from the physician to, make a report, write down the notes, or take the notes at the same time as the patient is speaking. And that's really something they already see now and that they have a lot of hope for in the future. So we're coming towards the end of the episode, and really thankful for your time and your insights. The last question, which is a common question that we've asked as well, the other guest on the show, and in your case, it's probably a bit different because it was a question around clinical practice. But if you had a magic wand, what type of digital solution would you like to put in the hands of healthcare professionals that you work with? So you can be a bit imaginative.
Okay. Well, if I had magical wand, for sure, I would give access to the different solutions providers, access to the data that are already in the healthcare system, because this is really exactly where we are struggling a little bit to have this communication between different systems. And so ideally what I would like to have is only one tool to be used by physicians on a daily basis, where they can have access to all of the information about the patients, all of the test results, and also to a specific portal of algorithms that is already part of the data workflow without adding an additional touch point. And and it would be very cool if the software in this case could be also connected with the hardware, so automatically have all of the information coming from all of the sources. I think that would be really solving many problems, saving a lot of time, reducing the number of tasks, and make the interaction seamless. And that would be very cool.
So hopefully we get there at some point with the centralized
hopefully.
System for each hospital that also facilitates as well the work from
exactly.
Professionals. Thank you so much, Sara.
Thank you, Mathieu. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Cardio Insights. We hope you enjoyed it. If you want to dive further into other aspects of digital solutions in cardiovascular and emergency medicine, check out the other episodes of the series. To support the show, you could share this episode with your surroundings and leave a 5-star review on your preferred streaming platform. Cardio Insights is a podcast brought to you by Roche. Thank you for your time and see you in the next one.